Hello. We're going to do the intro live because this is a special Safety Wars program. What you're going to see tonight and experience tonight, or whenever you're watching this, is going to be one of those signature presentations that we are creating, and it's specifically on COVID-19, inspired by the questioning on Dr. Fauci yesterday in the Senate Committee on Homeland Security, I think it was. But it doesn't even matter. You had Rand Paul there. And I'm going to say this. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV or the radio or Safety FM or anything. Or on the internet. We're going to be talking about some legal issues. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff tonight. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. Whatever you want to call it, some people called it a Gouverneau show. Some people called it justice. Some people said it was appropriate, but what was it? It was more or less like an indictment. Now, Dr. Fauci's response to every one of the questions was asserting his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. Now, my understanding is that if you give an opening statement and you can't go out and answer the questions with that statement. You can't assert your Fifth Amendment privilege. The other thing is, what I've heard, you cannot assert that Fifth Amendment privilege if you have blanket immunity and pass the statute of limitations and a full-blown pardon. Can't do it. So we're going to let the lawyers decide that. We're going to talk about exactly what the hell happened out there. So everybody is innocent until proven guilty. This is Safety FM, and this is Safety Wars. And we are going to be rocking that safety boat today. So mark it on your calendars, because I think yesterday is going to be a hallmark day. It's going to be one of those days where everybody's going to remember where they were, what they were doing, and everything else. Let me make sure I have the right microphone on. Yeah, we got the right microphone on. Right? Hold on. There we go. We're rocking that safety boat. Now, where the hell have I been? Let me start out with that. Over the last couple of weeks, I had some minor surgery. Well, no, the difference is between minor and major surgery. Everyone knows that. Minor surgery is what the other guy has. I could not do the Vulcan salute. And if you notice on camera for you guys, I have 19 stitches in my hand. Don't mean to gross anybody out. Jay Allen says to me, Jimmy, that looks like AI. No, it ain't AI, I assure you. I had trigger finger surgery, but we're not going to talk about that. Last week I was incapacitated. I felt like I had the aftermath of COVID, where you're just tired all the time. And then earlier this week we were playing catch up because I couldn't work last week. I'm not going to work when I am on painkillers, and I'm not going to work when I'm all doped up. Some people say you're always doped up, so what difference does it make? What are you going to do? Let's start out. I put together a lot of stuff here. All right, and we were trying to get this to work where I do a split screen, but it wasn't working or anything else. So this is what we have. COVID-19, respiratory protection, and accountability. This is what it comes down to. I'm going to say this, and I think this was one of the main points yesterday. Fauci, right, Dr. Fauci, influenced national policy. He did not personally issue every mandate, but he did influence it. Because let's remember something here with this. We're safety professionals, are we not? Yeah, we're safety professionals. What happens when someone issues a non-mandatory standard? What happens? We have non-mandatory standards all the time, don't we? Oh yeah, you better believe it. If you're a safety professional, you have been involved in non-mandatory standards. Trade organization, an FPA. They have a whole bunch of non-mandatory standards. You have the NFPA, you have American Wellness Society, so you have the ISO standards, ISO 14001, and all of those standards, all non-mandatory. And what happens, well, you also have under OSHA the General Duty Clause. You can go look that up, what that is. That basically says if there's a standard and it's a potentially serious outcome, we're not worried about de minimis, and there's some standards, recognized standard, and you didn't protect your employees from it, and it was feasible for you to do that, you're guilty. You are fine. You are cited. So we understand that. Now let's remember, a lot of cases are out there. My understanding, they're not even resolved yet, especially in New York, dealing with COVID policy and what companies did or didn't do. But what do you see here in a court of law? Well, the government said this, and the government said that, and Fauci said this, and Fauci said that, and you weren't listening to Fauci, so therefore you're evil, and you are liable. That's what we were faced with. Government officials, same deal. Again, we're adding context here. Government officials, same thing. Managing, we're not talking the legislative branch, generally speaking. The executives, your public health officials. Oh, we weren't, no, we're not, we got to follow it because then we're liable. And then you got the one hand, why aren't you using common sense? And you got people like me, well, let's use common sense. Well, let's explain what we need to do. And I wish this program was on during COVID because we would have been doing this. However, one of the outgrowths of COVID, positive, negative, my critics say negative, is here. We're here talking. That was one of the events. So we could be in a position where we could go out, pardon me. So we're in a position where we could go and give you information here. So what does it come down to? We talk about safety here as what? Not zero accidents, zero incidents, zero releases, or 000, or in a COVID case, zero illnesses, zero fatalities. We talk about capacity and resilience. People say, Jimmy, why is that such a big deal? Capacity and resilience. I'll explain to you why capacity and resilience is a big deal. Capacity and resilience are this. Capacity is what you could do. All your abilities, all your PPE, all your procedures and everything else. And the resilience is how you could adapt in the field, right? So presumably, if you want to make something safer, you add capacity, you add resilience. You add all different types. You add guards, you add blah, 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 blah. What we had here was the traditional definition of safety, which is zero accidents, zero illnesses, zero releases. Zero this, zero. And guess what? If it's not zero, if it's not zero, you got a problem. And this is how it was communicated. If you do X, Y, and Z, then no COVID. That's when you get with the zero, with a goal of zero. And that's how it was sold. If you wear the mask, if you do separate, if you do this, we're not going to get COVID. You're not going to spread it. If you do X, Y, and Z, then you're putting capacity in the system. That's the way it should have been said. And because safety is capacity and resilient, right? You're putting capacity into your body, eating healthy, doing everything with that. We change our culture, our society, what we're doing, how we act. We're putting that to better manage and protect against COVID. That's a hell of a lot, right? That now you need people to think a little bit about that. Maybe that's too long. But it's pretty easy to communicate. If you do X, Y, and Z, then no COVID. If you get the vaccination, you're not going to get COVID. If you shut down for 2 weeks, then you're going to get COVID. And you're not going to get COVID. And then what happens is, here, we get into the situation. Here, let me put this back up here. Right, do the big thing. If you stay away from people, you decrease the likelihood of spreading disease. Versus, this will definitely protect you. Now, we are used to, in our society, Because for the last 80 years, maybe, the way BBS is implemented, we had recently, last time I spoke to you, and I meant to talk about it more, was the symposium down in Orlando, Florida, with Nick Weatherly and our own Todd Conklin and Jay Allen. And Nick being the BBS guy, but he's a reasonable BBS guy, a behavioralist. Maybe he's offended, and I'm sorry if I'm offending you, Nick, calling you a behavior-based safety guy. But you're really not, in my opinion, Jimmy's opinion, with that, because you're reasonable. And you made one statement there. If I were to go and implement BBS the way it's being implemented by a lot of organizations, which is blame the worker and foreman, so you got the person with the least amount of power and the second most, and the person with the second most least amount of power, two bottom of the rung people, right? You're blaming them for a system. You have a problem. How is this implemented into COVID? How was it? You are evil or sick because you didn't listen to the government or follow government procedures. Shame on you. Right? Well, how else is BBS implemented? Go ahead. How is it? It's a concentration on numbers, graphs, photos to reportedly show progress. And I'm going to say this, reported numbers, which are named for, which generate graphs, which generate photos that are out of context often, and to show progress. And of course, we remember Goodhart's Law, right? Oh, let me get this slide up here. Remember Goodhart's Law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. If it is being measured, it's being manipulated. So what happened on our job sites? And this happened. Son of a bitch, I have COVID. Oh my God. If I'm out of work, I'm going to lose freaking pay. I'm out of sick days. So guess what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to report COVID. Or I'm going to, oh, hey, boss, I got something to do after 8 hours. Okay? You just stay over there. I'm going to, I'm not going to work. I can't work the overtime. Anything wrong? Anything wrong? No, nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. I just can't work. So you go home and you try to sleep it off. Hopefully you come back next day. You can work. Right? So stuff doesn't get reported. So these, I was on projects where it said, Jimmy, we had 400 or 500 people here, and about half of them had COVID when they didn't report it, because if we reported it, the job would be shut down. This is where you have perverse incentives, verbal and nonverbal. We're not going to say we're going to shut you down, right? But, you probably shouldn't work if you had 250 people sick. So now you have that problem. Now, right? And of course, no, if you got sick, it's because you weren't following procedures, you're unhealthy, you're this, you're that, and you're blaming the person. Tell me that didn't happen. People weren't thinking of like that. Why? Because management, right, often, and the people in charge, they want sea level, hold on. What do they want sea level things? Maybe they learned about behavior-based safety back in the 80s because they're in charge now. Oh, well, that's how safety is done. No, we don't involve every other thing involved, but safety doesn't evolve. And that's what they want, was a behavior-based safety model. And by the way, Nick Weatherly, right? He says nobody knows what the hell behavior-based safety is because it gets remarketed and repackaged so much. He had up there like 5 different friggin' definitions. Then he came over to Todd, right? Safety FM's own Todd Conklin, right? And his whole thing, human organizational performance, also known as the New View, Safety 2.0. People make mistakes. The minute that you handed someone a mask, I will talk more about that later. Now you're into a situation where do you need training? Are they going to put it on right? Are they going to wear it all the time? Are they going to this? And a whole bunch of, I remember people were reusing the same app for 3 or 4 weeks. And the problem was that they were using masks, not a respirator. They were using a mask. Face covering. We have, and this is reported, this is the most deadliest virus ever known to man. And we're going to treat it, it's so dangerous, we're going to wear a face covering. All right, let me repeat that. This is the most dangerous virus ever known to man, ever known out there, and we're going to wear a face covering. Not something else. What was the reason we given? I don't know. Fauci was asked. Pled the fifth. 111 times. I didn't count it, but that's what was reported. 111 times. But at the time, well, we weren't enough to go around. And then they showed him with one day, masks are good, man. I'll go back. You can go watch all 3 hours. So now you had Todd at the symposium. Human and organizational performance. People make mistakes. People aren't going to put that on there. Blame fixes nothing. Well, here they're all going around. Blaming everybody. Blaming you got sick. It's your friggin' fault. It's not his fault. He brought it into the house. Blah, blah. You got all to put everybody at each other's throats and solve not a freaking thing. Context drives behavior. We mentioned that. People have perverse reasons, sometimes good reasons, not to do stuff. Or it makes sense at the moment. Like they mentioned during the hearing. Wait, we're out there in the middle of an open football field. We don't really need to wear a mask. We're not sitting with anybody. Well, guess what? You're under freaking arrest. Learning is vital. When you say and you make these statements here, if this, then this, do this, and you're not going to get COVID, and it ain't freaking working, you ain't learning, and you're not adapting, and you're not being honest with the people. So, and that leads to other problems. We'll talk about that. How leaders respond matters. Leadership's reaction to failure determines whether employees report problems and help the organization learn or hide information out of fear. Applied to society, its human organizational performance goes all over the place. Applies to the workplace, applies to society. Oh, yeah. I'm all fired up tonight. Oh, yeah, we're all fired up here. How about the other questions that were not asked here? Many other questions. Why the mask or face covering versus NIOSH rated? I mean, they could have answered that because you know who doesn't, we're talking N95, N99, N100, P100, all those respirators that have a NIOSH rating on them. Guess what? Who certifies them? Centers for Disease Control. All right? Loaded with world-renowned, world-renowned respirator experts. I mean, these guys are into safety more than Jimmy Poesl. They're out there. Why weren't they in front of the cameras? Why did we have to see Cuomo, Murphy, I think it was at the time, Fauci, all these other, in front? Why couldn't we get someone out there who knew what the hell was going on with this stuff? Why not an expert? Here's the next set of questions. What would happen in private industry? Would the same decisions been made if there was a reasonable chance of repercussions on the decision makers? We talk about that all the time here. Sovereign immunity rears its ugly head. Would and again, counterfactual, not very useful, but I think this is one of the few times it can be. What would you have done had you known you would have been in front of a committee 5 years later? What would your incentive been? Maybe you would have made a worse decision. Maybe you would have made a better decision. We don't know because you're dealing with it at the time. But I know one thing, if you, in private industry, and where you're liable for this crap, for making wrong decisions, you're going to make damn sure you make the right decision, aren't you? How come we didn't learn the message from all the other situations? And I'm not allowed to go into the anthrax cleanups back in 2001. But I will say this. it was evident to me, right? It was evident to everybody who involved. Well, I can't say everybody. There's one son of a bitch who I can't say that. Evident to everybody, they didn't have the capacity, the means, the CDC, or the means of whether or anything on how to manage that situation. If everyone didn't sign NDAs, I could get people on here who would be talking a mile a minute on this. Incorrect understanding of what a vaccination is. What's a vaccination? Vaccinations are given prior to an illness. So vaccinations are not 100% ever. There are adverse reactions. Official numbers, very low. We're talking less than 0.5% reportedly. A negative adverse reactions. But the problem is that when you're giving out millions of shots, millions of boosters, now it becomes a significant number with that. And as we know, the illness evolves like all other viruses. So, again, that's another one. Why wasn't that in there? Years worth of safety training, and this is what it is. And I indict every safety professional out there who was in charge of this, who did not give pushback. Right? Sometimes you couldn't give pushback. We were training people for years, since 1990, basically, on this. Years worth of safety training out the window by people we trained. There wasn't a leading indicator to this. Oh, yeah, there was. Oh, there were a leading indicator to this. Well, what was it? Go ahead. We'll be talking about it in about a month and a half. Go ahead. Happened 9/11. Why? Look what happened on 9/11. All the respiratory illnesses. That was a leading indicator, folks. Looking back, no, I said it at the time. Why aren't these people in respirators? Why don't we? We'll be talking about that because we got some inside information on that we're going to share with you. Right? And the most important question, what did we learn as a society and how do we plan for the next time? This is the point of the Democrats. We have current issues going on here, and it's a valid thing. What are we going to do next time? I tell you what they're going to do next time. They're going to ride out that issue attention cycle. They're going to ride it out and hope you all forget about it. That's what they're going to do. Oh, yeah. Don't believe me? Believe me. Believe Jimmy on that. Right. So, why was he in front of that? Essentially, yesterday, was there a perjury trap? I think that's obvious. They're trying to get him on the record. Perjury trap. Just tell the truth. Guess what? That's why he didn't say it. Fifth Amendment. But you have multiple things here. One, sovereign immunity. A lot going on out there. Official defenses. Fauci has his defenders out there. We had 6 attorneys there yesterday. He has his defenders. They're going to spin this like you wouldn't believe. You have statutes of limitations, and I'm not an attorney, so we have more. We have pardons. He was pardoned. So what's the only venue left? A congressional hearing. People normally don't go to jail for a congressional hearing unless they admit to a crime that gets referred over to the Department of Justice, and they handle it. So next week sometime, they said Tuesday, I believe, they're going to have a contempt of Congress because hearing on this. Again, this is the last venue. It's a congressional hearing with that. A dramatic hearing is not automatically accountability. He was not, right, Fauci and the others, they were not held accountable. Can't. What did the hearing produce? Allegation and denials, Fifth Amendment invocations, partisan confrontation, a possible contempt vote. And I tell you, it felt good for a lot of people yesterday. You hear the one senator from Indiana, Montesey, I believe is right? Basically saying, who the bleep did you think you were? Doing all this stuff. without a scientific basis, an allegation, without a scientific. We've all been there where we've had to make calls. Fortunately, for most of us, it's only on a job site or a company. Not doing. Again, I've been there. I know what it is. When you're unsure, how is this going to go down? So what do? You add capacity, you add controls, and you pray for the best. I've been there. And if you had enough capacity, enough controls, enough resilience, if something goes to Guano, you're able to recover. And that's the whole thing. Human and organizational performance. How do you recover? How are we going to recover this? What a safety review does, or a review of this type, requires tested facts, defined authority, competing harms, corrective actions, and lessons for the next emergency. That is how a safety investigation, that is how an investigation goes. What happened, right? We've said it here before with Jody Fisher. This is what we know. This is what we don't know. This is what we're going to find out. Real simple. That's what we're doing. Had Fauci done that, again, the counterfactual, so we know for the next time, had that been done, we would have been good. Now, if you want to see a master in communicating hazard for a situation, when the Francis Scott Key Bridge got wiped out, the emergency responders and the governor of Maryland, fantastic response, hands down. Why? This is what we know, this is what we don't know, this is what we're trying to find out, and this is who I am. 4 things. Very simple. So, here we have it, and we wrote a song on this, on Safety Wars, the Music of Safety Wars, Volume 1, on Spotify, on the Wuhan, right? On the Wuhan, right? Early 2020. I'm going to place it, that's when the public first heard about it. But I'm going to, and then you have the 6-foot rule, then the airborne spread, as evidence grew, ventilation, and again, we got bullshitted on that one too. Oh, we heard, well, we're taking care of the ventilation. Did they increase ventilation in my town and all the schools? No, they just brought it up to spec. And it still didn't work. Because we had one teacher there, I won't out her, she was out there, middle of winter, she's out there in a sundress and flip-flops, teaching school because the HVAC system had her room, it was a constant 85 degrees. I said to my son, I said, James, why? Why are you in shorts? Dad, it's hot in there. Dude, it's winter. You got to put on a pair of pants so you're in shorts. But Dad, it's hot in there. So my wife goes to parent teachers and I go with her. We go in there. We're like, is it always this hot in there? She says, yeah, that's why I'm always in a sundress and flip-flops. That's why all the kids are wearing shorts and tank tops. I don't say anything. It's against the crap, but it's hotter than hell. Right? So what happens? Trust is damaged. Failures damage trust. Right? Now, in reality, let me switch on over to this. Here. Give me a second here. Now, this is from Voice of America. VOA, right now basically defunct. But this is the official government thing. Here we go again. U.S. military did not bring COVID-19 to Wuhan. This is from August 19, 2021. I'm going to go and I'm going to save this because they're taking this crap down, strangely enough, after yesterday. We've had dead links all of a sudden. I worked last night. You're working tonight, man. All right. So, during the military war games, which was in 2019 in Wuhan, in like October, guess what? First cases of COVID. Here it is, right here in VOA News. Well, what difference does that make? So they knew that something was up. And I'm going to say they knew something was up. They definitely knew something was up. Jimmy knew something was up. People in the industry knew something was up. Why was that? Because starting in September, what started flying off the shelves? What didn't we have anymore? Come on, I'll give everybody a guess. Right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They didn't have respirators anymore. They're becoming more and more short. We heard on Coast to Coast AM with George Noory something going down over there in China. We don't know what. But all of a sudden there were reported lockdowns and quarantines and everything else. And in this country, all of a sudden you couldn't get the PPE, you couldn't get the respirator cartridges. We don't know when they're coming in, Jim. I'm ordering them. Supply chain disruption. All in there. So they were leading into, that's the context we're having to deal with. All right, so let's go back up to PowerPoint. And here we go. All right. So you had NIOSH, right? National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. The missing public conversation. Filtration for efficiency, facial equals, fit testing, user check seals, facial hair, medical evaluation, training, consistent wear. Was not in the conversation. We were told to go out and get those imitation paper masks. With that. And it's the deadliest virus ever known. You got to do all this stuff. We got to shut everything down. We got to close the schools. We got to do this. We got to do that. Well, guess what? Guess what happened? We're going to put on face coverings. Well, why is that, Dr. Fauci? Why is that, everybody? Well, we don't have that. We got to save the N95 and above. Medical N95 is what they were talking about for the hospitals and everything else. Oh, but that'll help you. Right? Oh, and then you get the other thing. Right? So let's go on back over here. And by the way, we're going to print this one out too. Because we're going to print this one out, save this one. Because this here is an indictment against NIOSH and the Centers for Disease Control. Right here. So we're going to save this right here, right? All right. So this is on cdc.gov /NIOSH./bulletin 2009 /respirators and masks.html. And this was posted from October 4th in 2009, right around the time of SARS. Right? With this. Right? And someone pointed this out. How does a NIOSH respirator work? You would think that it would be what we call inertial compaction, or you have like a coffee filter, and the viruses stop and particles stop, right? But there are 4 different mechanisms that a NIOSH respirator does. Again, this is on the CDC website. Why wasn't this shared? That would have been my question. Why didn't you get a certified industrial hygienist, certified safety professional? If I was around, it would be, why didn't you get the safety warrior Jimmy Poesl involved here? Jay Allen, why didn't you get him? Why didn't you get Todd Conklin and everybody else on the network? Sheldon. I mean, we're doing, and there's thousands of podcasts. Why couldn't you get somebody like that out there rather than Dr. Fauci? No, he's an expert on this stuff. And then what happens? There are 4 different ways. Well, let me get back. Inertial impaction. With this mechanism, let me share. Particles having too much inertia due to size or mass cannot follow the airstream as it is diverted around a filter fiber. This mechanism is responsible for collecting larger particles. We'll get into size in a minute. Interception. As particles pass close to a filter fiber, they may be intercepted by the fiber. Again, this mechanism is responsible for collecting larger particles. Diffusion. Small particles are constantly bombarded by air molecules, which causes them to deviate from the airstream and come into contact with a filter fiber. This mechanism is responsible for collecting smaller particles. An electrostatic attraction. Oppositely charged particles are attracted to a charged fiber. This collection mechanism does not favor a certain particle size. Anyone want to guess what particle size that is? It's 0.3 microns. Right? That's why all of these masks, all of these filtering face fuse respirators, all your P100 cartridges are rated at what could a fiber particle at 0.3 microns how much that can get through. We're going to show you the graph here in a minute. Why? I'm not exactly sure. But when I ask Jesus, when I meet him, I'm going to ask, that's going to be right up there, and I'm dead serious on that. Why 0.3 microns? I don't know. Maybe someone has an answer out there. Why would you make? I don't know why that is. So here we have right from the publication. Filter mechanism, inertial impaction, and you got a nice little photo there, right? With that. Let's see, can I zoom in? All right, fill it in. Right, so you hear inertial impaction, interception, where it goes via it, diffusion, where it goes bad, route there, disturbs the route, goes into the fiber, and electrostatic attraction, negative and positive attract. Now, particle size. This right here is the most important thing that you can see here that we're going to go over and talk about when it comes to this. Particle diameter, right? Where on this graph is the COVID particle? So we have 0.1 microns here, right, with this. Then we have 0.2, right, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, then 1. It's 1 micron, right? Over here, we have 0.1 micron, 0.2 micron, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7. I'm sorry, 0.07. I'm sorry, reading this wrong. 0.1, 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, 0.6, 0.5, 0.04, 0.03. So that goes from 0.1 to 0.01, right? And we're right around here, we're at 0.25, right? And we go up here, and on the x-axis, we have 1 is 100%. That's the efficiency of 1 is 100%. So basically, you're there. You're at 100% efficiency. Why am I going through this? I had to beat off a whole slew of TikTok rangers out there. And Instagram idiots. Oh, those masks, it goes right through. They're rated for this 0.3 and this low. Guess what? This is right here. This for here. I should send it over to the people who are still on the air promoting that crap. So do the mask. Does a NIOSH respirator work? Absolutely. With that. Does. But what do you have? What do you have with a filtering face fuse respirator? If I have a respiratory hazard, it's my policy to never issue a filtering face fuse respirator. Why do you think that is? Any idea? Because they wear them wrong. They're not fit tested in them. They're not medically cleared in them because it's only a fit. And again, they're thinking about changing the policy. They haven't changed it. You got it with a man. Look up here. It's all on their chin, so they're breathing out their nose, so it doesn't make any sense. They wearing them like Princess Leia on both sides of their ears. You got all different. General public, no training, no. Why did they say? Oh, we'll just wear a non-rated mask, KN95, FFP2 is the European version. The K95 is the Korean version, as I recall, and all this other stuff. They're all equivalent. As long as they're rated, they're officially rated. They're not coming from China where it's lied about often on some things, from my understanding. Okay, get a rate. Why do you think that? Why? You don't have to comply with 29 CFR 1910-134, the respiratory protection standard. If they were going to say NIOSH respirators, there's a hell of a lot of people out there. I see them today. They're walking around with respirators out there. Oh, I'm so sick. I gotta wear an N9. I gotta do this. I said, you may want to think about that, because you may not be medically fit to wear that. Right? And you got to do fit testing, right? Protect the gap, right? Approved equipment. All of that stuff goes in there. We're going to do this again with this. Other controversies follow the same pattern. Schools. Closures address uncertain risk, but impose the learning problems, according to the testimony yesterday. That's been my experience. Developmental and economic harm. There are some people who still will never recover from this. COVID. Vaccinations and vaccines. Strong protection against severe disease was sometimes communicated as durable prevention of infection and transmission. Research. The HHS, Health and Human Services Inspector General, found NIH and EcoHealth oversight failures. But that does not necessarily prove that, they're funding these things, does not prove that these labs created COVID or was escaped. Right? So what did we have? Safety professional became the face of distant rules, and security guards and police. What did we enforce? Any person in charge. And when you say to I got into it at one facility, and I wrote them a letter. I said, you know that this is wrong. We've been telling people for 40 years, if you have a respiratory hazard, NIOSH respirator. If we didn't do that, guess what? We'd be good chance we're going to be at a minimum fired, at a minimum perhaps get charged with criminal negligence. Right? If I were to tell somebody on the anthrax cleanup 25 years ago, we have anthrax and we're going to wear a face covering, it would have been like, Jimmy, there's the door. What the bleep are you doing? That's what would have happened. But because of sovereign immunity and everything else, that doesn't happen. Could the mask have worked? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Conflicting studies. But again, when you go and you describe capacity, and you're adding capacity now, it makes sense, doesn't it? We're adding capacity. We don't have enough of these. But this is better than nothing. We're adding capacity. We're adding capacity. Now, wearing a mask makes perfect sense. We're adding capacity. It's not perfect. We're getting there, because safety is capacity and resilience. Resilience is, right, capacity is you're adding training, you're adding all this other stuff. Resilience is us following the rules. Right? But we know that people are going to do workarounds because we're safety professionals. We know that. Here we absorbed the fallout. I heard multiple times, so what are we talking about? Damaged relationships, diminished credibility, grievances and litigation, workforce division, moral injury, distrust of future guidance. Let's talk about that. Damaged relationships. I heard, and I still heard, I didn't know people hated safety people so much until COVID. And because we got people fired for not following protocols, guess what? They're holding that against us, dude. I don't want to hear it. I go and I hear it all the time. Unless you're dealing with very mature people in a very mature situation. Average worker will hold that against you. And we're finding that out now with nobody trusts the government. because of this shit. How this was handled. Diminished credibility, grievances and litigation, workforce division, moral injury, distrust of future guidance. All in there. Right? Safety requires capacity, resilience, and accountability. Remember, right? We talked about that, right? Accountability. Who created the rule? Why did they create it? Who authorized it? Who enforced it? And who lived with its consequences? All of that. Right? Real accountability asks harder questions. I think that was part of what it is. To hold somebody accountable on some level. Was the evidence? What was the evidence? What was the evidence and what was the precaution? Who, right? That's an AHA there. That's a JHA, JSA. What's the risk and what are we going to do about it? Who made the decision and who enforced it? Again, who did this? Who made the decision? Nobody wants to say, well, we listen to Fauci, we listen here. Nobody wants to know. Nobody knows. Right? It's like the old Saturday Night Fever, right? Back in the day. Right? Oh, not me, him. Right? Nobody's, right? When evidence changed, how quickly did policy change? Another hard question. Who accepted responsibility for collateral harm? So far, nobody. Right? Whether you think there should have been a responsibility or penalty, nobody got. We got pardons. We got sovereign immunity. We're running out things. So, what's the moral of the story here? Where do we go from here? Build public health that deserves public trust. Right? With that. Why are we set up here with the safety wars? In response to this, to teach safety professionals to get off their freaking knees and stand up for themselves. Evidence without arrogance, precaution without pretense, authority with accountability. Build public health that deserves public trust. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? Why do we do safety wars? Why? A lot of reasons. One of them is education. We're into education and training here. This is what we do. You want it? 845-269-5772. Jim at safetywars.com. Safetywars.com. And our new site, James Poesl. P as in Peter. O-E. S as in Sam. L because I love you.com. That's what we're here for. Education. Inspiration, building back those relationships, leadership. Don't live on your knees. Lead. Right? That's like what the song says. We're going to take a brief break for this, and we're going to do, boom, boom, boom. Hold on, we'll do that song.
A foreign zone, Wuhan lights, but chills in the bone. Flags were high, the spirit loud, but something strange crept through the crowd.
So let's talk a little bit more about this, right? And I'm going to be issuing, we'll call it Jimmy Poesl's first address to the world or the nation, or maybe my coming out party. I don't know. Let's remember here, right? Pain for pain doesn't get you anyway. It felt good, and I'm sure it felt good when a certain senator after the hearing called him a piece of guvno. I'm sure that felt good. You got to face an adversary of sorts, and you got to, but I'm going to tell you, there are people, and this is not a pity, I'm not playing the victim here. There are people out there who victimized me many, many times. And you know what? I told them eventually I handled it, maybe a little bit tougher than what I should have. And guess what? If I felt good for about 30 seconds, and I said, why the bleep did I handle it that way? A lesson learned. Pain for pain doesn't work. Let's see if, with this here. All right? Safety requires, let's do this. I have a little bit of an interest. Safety professionals were left holding the bag on this whole situation. Story does not end in Washington. The consequences reached every workplace in America. And workplace safety professionals were placed directly in the line of fire. Safety managers, industrial hygienists, environmental health and safety personnel, human resources employees, supervisors, nurses, and others were designated to implement and enforce rules they did not create. We enforced distancing requirements. We knew that they were wrong. We conducted screenings and contact tracing. How many of us went out and became certified contact tracers? After I had COVID, 3 months later, they called me up to do contact tracing. Oh, yeah. We separated work groups. We restricted access to buildings. We sent employees home. We participated in disciplinary actions. In some workplaces, we helped terminate employees who would not comply. We made coworkers and friends uncomfortable because the organization told us that enforcement was necessary to protect everyone else. Then when policies changed, many organizations behaved as those rules had appeared on their own, out of thin air. The executives who approved the policies moved on. The agencies revised their guidance. The politicians changed their language, reframed things. The safety professionals still had to walk through the same facility and face the employees impacted by those decisions. We became the human face of rules written somewhere else. Employees did not argue with a federal guidance document. They argued with the safety manager standing at the entrance. They did not direct their anger toward the distant official appearing on television. They directed it toward the person telling them to put on a mask, remain 6 feet away, submit to testing, leave the workplace, or risk discipline. Safety professionals were blamed from both directions. Workers blamed us for enforcing the rules, while management blamed us when enforcing produced conflict, complaints, staffing shortages, or legal exposure. Some safety professionals are still dealing with those consequences. Damaged relationships, diminished credibility, grievances, litigation, workforce division, moral injury, and distrust of any future guidance. That's fallout is part of the pandemic record. It cannot be dismissed with the phrase, the science changed. Changing science may explain why guidance evolved. It does not erase what people were ordered to do under previous guidance, and it does not repair the professional relationships damaged during enforcement. Safety requires capacity and resilience. And let's face it, people with the least policy-making authority absorb the most anger, and that's a failure of leadership. Real accountability has to ask harder questions. The most valuable question, or one of the most valuable at least, knowing what you know today, what would you have done differently? The next question should have been even more important. What should the country now do to prepare for the pandemic? Those questions do not excuse misconduct. They're how an investigation becomes a safety review rather than what we saw yesterday, a public spectacle. Right? Because it's all about accountability, guys. Because fighting that safety war, and in fighting that safety war, accountability cannot stop with the person who delivered the rule. It must be reach the people who created it, authorized it, enforced it, and lived with its consequences. That's all I got for tonight. It wasn't that enough? For Safety Wars, this is Jim Poesl signing off. I hope to be back tomorrow. I have a speech I will be giving. We'll call it the Safety Wars Address to the World. Maybe I came up with a better name, but that's what I'm going to call it for now. Signing off with fighting that safety war, Jim Poesl.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.